Hi there. Welcome to the Imperfect Prophet podcast for women who wonder. Frankly, as we go through life, I'm sure we wonder about a great deal. First as little kids, then as adolescents, then as young women, then as transitional women. What are we calling ourselves these days? And then you get to this point in life, or my point in life, when you're postmenopausal and wondering what's next. Wondering if the parade already passed you by. Join me, Wonder Wendy. I'm going to be your host as we talk about some of these unique challenges that face women today in a new millennium, going through menopause and trying to live a rich, full life. There might even be a few men and younger women that want to listen in too. That's okay. But there's a roller coaster and we're all on it. And I'm going to be your guide to help you figure out when you should close your eyes, when you should hang on, and maybe we'll explore some ideas for what works for you if it doesn't work for me, or vice versa. So join the conversation, pick up your favorite beverage, and we'll talk to you soon. Welcome to the Imperfect Prophet. The other night, I auditioned for a fashion show. Not the first time I've done it. They are called castings. It's always exciting and a little bit nerve-wracking to put yourself out there to be evaluated and see if you will make the cut. Now, at a casting, you wear all black clothing that shows your body. No large t-shirts or sweatpants here. Bodysuits and body-conscious clothing are de rigueur. No makeup or minimal makeup. No sparkly jewelry. There's not much to hide behind. That's the nerve-wracking part. That and wondering if you're going to make the cut. Anyway. As I headed out the door, my husband said, "Don't overwhelm them with your fabulosity." I laughed at him and told him, most of the other models are under 30. I don't think there's any danger of that. I got to the casting, and I happened to repeat that story to one of the other models. And then I caught myself. The very thing that I've been encouraging you to do, I failed to do. I wasn't standing in my own confidence. I was already measuring myself against others. Well, welcome to another episode of The Imperfect Prophet with me, your host, Wonder Wendy. Today, we're going to explore those times when we forget to be our best selves because we're yardsticking, using comparison to measure ourselves instead of trusting our own instincts. That yardstick is something that comes from within and from society. And sometimes we even apply it to those around us. Now, I grew up with an actual yardstick in the house, and I still own one. If those of you watching on YouTube will see I'm holding up a yardstick. My mom kept one by her sewing machine. My dad had another in his workshop. 3 feet long and generally made of wood. They often bore the unmistakable logo from some local store. I had to actually buy this one. They don't give them away anymore. Wonder when that changed. Anyway, that 36-inch measuring device served as a standard, something you could trust. They were a perfect long straight edge and a great way to measure almost anything. Now, a few years ago, I heard it go from a noun to a descriptor. I heard the term yardsticking. As something more than just about fabric or lumber, it became about us, about measuring ourselves against others, whether it is a neighbor, coworker, or someone on TV or on social media. Now, it's natural. We are actually trained to compare ourselves to others. From the moment our parent says, "Why can't you be more like?" or a teacher puts our work on a bell curve in class. Then you get to senior superlatives in the yearbook, or who is the valedictorian or the captain of whatever team. Those patterns of behavior are woven into our identity, starting at a very young age. I am going to challenge you to reprogram that behavior and help me remember to do it as well. Could you please hold me accountable? Apparently, I need help with that. The comparison trap. We've all done it. Someone pays you a compliment, and instead of saying, "Thank you," the first thing you do is point out who looks better. Oh, this old thing. She's the one with real style. Oh, that woman is taller, skinnier, prettier. Oh, her hair is shinier. Her house is bigger. Her life looks better than mine. Many years ago, I sold makeup at home parties. Yes, the boxes were pink, so you know where it was. It was just a little extra for supplementing household income. I remember one skincare class where there was a beautiful Asian woman. I complimented her glowing skin, her striking features, and yet all she wanted was my Anglo eyes. I thought she was beautiful, but she was measuring herself against women of a different genetic background. She was holding the wrong yardstick. And haven't we all? Also, this past week, I attended an event where the vast majority of the speakers rattled off the amount of money they'd earned for themselves or their customers. The underlying message was clear. If you're not making 8 figures, are you even trying? And if you walked into that feeling good about your life, suddenly you're wondering if you should be ashamed of being content. Sometimes it's about money. Sometimes it's about looks. Sometimes it's even about what school your kids attend or what car is in your driveway. We measure against yardsticks that weren't built for us. And in the measuring, we lose sight of who we are. Now, one of the speakers at that event was Michael Burnoff, the author of Average Sucks. Very compelling speaker. And he said something that landed with me. He said, the tragedy isn't that all people fail or that people fail. The tragedy is that people succeed at being average. At first, I was ready to buy in. After all, who wants to be average? I don't think I've ever heard anyone say, my goal in life is to be perfectly average. No. Most people want a little something more. Then I realized he was holding that yardstick and telling us all that if we didn't take his class, if we didn't read his book, if we didn't follow his lead, we were settling for average. And in being average, somehow I suck? Wait a second, what? I know that I am far from average. I know that you are far from average. And if you're not living into that, you have the potential to be. But for a split second, I accepted his yardstick for my life. Not all yardsticks are internal. Sometimes they are handed to us by mentors, family, friends, and enemies, some of whom may be wolves in sheep's clothing. If you don't know that one, I'll explain it in another episode. But I thank him for making me realize that society has always been handing us yardsticks. Long before Instagram feeds and TikTok reels, my parents taught me the expression, keeping up with the Joneses. A phrase that means we are all trying to become just as good as the other people on our street, or up the hill, or with a lake view, or a penthouse apartment. The temptation to need a better car, a bigger house, just to keep up, to meet that yardstick of social achievement. Yeah. And it goes back even further. Long before glossy Instagram feeds or Facebook likes, people were still wrestling with comparison. I don't know why this one popped into my mind, but there's a story of Jesus, and he's watching people make their donations at the temple. And, the wealthy come in and they put large sums and jewels and whatever they have into the treasury. The kind of stuff that would make headlines today. And then along came a poor widow, quietly, without ceremony. And she put in 2 tiny coins, barely enough to buy bread. She dropped them in, and I recall that something along the lines of, this poor widow has put in more than all of the rest. And, his followers were like, But, that was nothing. And look at the treasure. And Jesus pointed out that she gave out of all she had to live on, whereas the rich people gave out of abundance. Not that it's bad to give out of abundance, but those two things aren't to be measured by the same yardstick. That's the reversal of the yardstick. Mathematically, the rich man's gift was greater. But in truth, the widow's small offering was even more, because it wasn't something she could spare. That's the danger of yardsticking. Which truth are you looking at when you make that evaluation? And this isn't just a Christian story. Across faith traditions, you will find the same theme. What looks small in the world's yardstick is great in terms of heart and impact. There's a Hindu story, and I read this, so I'm going to apologize if I mispronounce it, the Mahabharata. And there's a story of Sudama, a poor Brahmin, who visited his childhood friend Krishna, who by now had become a king. Sudama knew he needed to bring a gift, but all he had was a handful of flattened rice to give. No jewels, no gold, just the little food he could spare. And Krishna welcomed it like it was the best thing he'd ever gotten, treasuring it more than all the riches of his palace, because it was offered with pure love and sincerity. Have you ever received a really humble gift and it touched you to your heart? That's exactly what I'm talking about, that reversal of the yardstick. The widow's coin, Sudama's rice, both seem insignificant in the world's yardstick. But by the measure of generosity, they were priceless. And that's the real question. Which yardstick are you using? The one the world hands us, or the one that measures devotion, courage, and authenticity? One of my yoga classmates and I were having a conversation, and she told me she lives in a proverbial tiny house, intentionally, and she loves it. If you suggested that she was settling for less, she'd be offended. Her yardstick is freedom, simplicity, and joy, the comfort of a little space that surrounds her. Or how about teachers who are deeply fulfilled by their work, even as they wonder where the money's going to come from when the bills are due? Society's financial yardstick says they're behind, but their personal measure says they're living with purpose. And let's be honest, we need to figure that one out as a society, because measuring value by dollars is foolish. Not everyone of value makes a fortune, and not everyone who makes a fortune is virtuous or worthy. That's just the truth. Now, there are everyday mini yardsticks. Think about it. Social media yardsticks, followers, likes, little blue hearts, smiles, emoticons, reposts. You probably know more words than I do, and if you don't, it's okay. Don't measure yourself by that. I've immersed myself in that world. I keep asking young friends to help me understand it better, because it is still somewhat anathema to me. How about parenting yardsticks, test scores, college admissions, extracurriculars? How many grandchildren do you have? Are your children married? Was it a big wedding? Does that really matter? How about those health yardsticks? What does the scale say? How are those crow's feet? How many steps did you take today? How many carbs did you eat? Ugh, and the dreaded counting calories. How I hate counting calories. I don't count calories anymore. I just try to eat well. We hold so many invisible sticks that we could build a fence out of them. Actually, we do build a fence out of them, and they contain us. They hold us in. They create a cage around our lives. And we're letting that happen. Sometimes the only way through is to recognize you're holding one. You may still be there, but you can build a gate in that fence. Start letting yourself out of that cage that you have built with way too many yardsticks. Now, I feel this yardsticking almost every time I go to yoga. So easy to walk in, roll out my mat, and immediately start comparing. There are the people with the young, beautiful, lithe bodies stretching with ease. They fold in half, kind of like origami, and I don't think I could ever do that. And that's the point. My body wasn't built that way. I was never that flexible and individual. And before I've even taken the first breath, I can almost feel like a failure. And then I have to center myself, build that gate, put away a few yardsticks, and remember they were built differently. Maybe they've been practicing for longer. There are a few women in the group, and men too, that are my age or older and can do these postures better. But a lot of them have been practicing for decades. And they were once that young, lithe body that was built to do that. It's a trap to measure yourself against the person in the front row who can balance on one finger while you're still figuring out what the teacher means when they say to stand firmly on all four corners of your feet. I know it sounds like a really weird phrase, but the more you practice and the more you do that intentionality, the more you recognize you haven't even been standing on your feet correctly. Well, I realized maybe you are. Maybe you're one of those people who has a natural gift to stand correctly on your feet. But look at feet. Most people stand wrong. Just gonna let you know that. Yoga isn't about the pose at all. It's about the practice and the journey and the evolution. It's an amazing thing to do. I encourage you to give it a try. And if you don't like the first practice you try, take a different class. Because I'll tell you, I used to hate yoga. And now I get cranky if I go a few days without getting into the studio. But it's also truth about any kind of fitness. Each body has its own story. Each person is on their own path. The only yardstick that matters is whether you showed up, whether you gave yourself space to breathe, whether you left the room a little more present than you walked in. Oh, and then there's the locker room. This was a huge evolution for me over my last 6 years of doing hot yoga. I am a girl who went to great lengths to avoid taking gym class all through school. If I could find a class that didn't require changing or showering, that was the one I signed up for. I took figure skating in college. Don't ask me to figure skate now. That would not be pretty. So that I wouldn't have to go shower in a locker room. I was terrified of showing people my body. The locker room can be a terrifying place for so many people. That naked space where you can't hide a thing, the place so traumatic, it formed a terrifying scene in the movie Carrie. Because we all share that trauma. Well, we don't all, obviously. There's some really self-confident people out there. I envy you. I model after you, and I'm trying to learn. But after I started yoga 6 years ago and realized that hot and sweaty, I really wanted to shower, and it meant changing in the locker room with other women. I began to learn that there's nothing like that space to remind you that all bodies are beautiful. Soft and strong, wrinkled and smooth, tall and short, round and lean, human bodies, lived in bodies, sacred bodies. I refuse to say real bodies. After all, aren't they all? It's like a living sermon against the yardstick. Every single one is different. Every single one carrying its own story. And every single one is worthy. And I think about how many times I've measured myself as less than because of a number on a scale, or the size of a tag, or size on the tag, not of the tag. Although if the tag is big, you can always cut it off with scissors so nobody sees what size you're wearing, because guess what? In my closet, there's everything from a 4 to 12. And not so long ago, before I'd been doing this yoga practice for so long, there were even 16s. Anyway, I was so focused on how my body looked in the mirror. But in that locker room, surrounded by all those beautiful, imperfect, honest bodies, I remember there is no one measure of beauty. Now, it just happens that my fitness journey is yoga. Yours might be running or dance or walking around the block or chasing your grandkids. Whatever it is, it's yours. Your mat, your breath, your journey. No yardstick required. Unless you want to improve, but then it's your own personal yardstick. Best time. Number of steps increasing every day. Feeling good about yourself. Ability to hold your breath. Sleeping well because you're exercising. And this doesn't happen just in yoga. My daughter used to swim competitively, and I learned the same lesson there. Every swimmer's best time to that date is posted when they are lined up for an event. It's so easy to compare. But the truth of the matter is that when you get in the water, you're only swimming against your best time. You are your own competition. And if you take the time to look up at your competitor, to look out of your lane, to see how they are doing, you are risking losing valuable time on your swim. So let that yardstick go. Measure against yourself, not against the competition. So let's reframe that measuring. Remember, we've built a gate. We're looking back and forth and figuring out what was influenced us. Rankings and yardsticks are never going to go away. Sorry. But what if we designed our own? Here are some questions I've started asking myself, and maybe they'll help you too. What makes you feel alive? What am I proud of today, no matter what the scoreboard says? Where am I expanding instead of shrinking? When you ask those kinds of questions, you don't need a yardstick. You need a compass that points towards wonder, growth, and your own joy. So let's circle back to that casting. Whether I got picked or not isn't the point. The win was catching myself, realizing that I was holding the invisible yardstick. And here's the bucket lister challenge for this week. Notice when the yardstick shows up in your hand. Notice when you're measuring yourself against a standard that was never meant for you. And if it's not serving you, set it down. If you are corralled by too many yardsticks, start breaking it down, or at the very least, build a gate for yourself. So the next time someone tells me not to overwhelm the room with my fabulosity, I'll smile and remember, the only measure that matters is mine. And if you're overwhelmed, I am so working on this personal challenge that I can't even say it. Isn't that funny? When your subconscious battles with your mouth, that's supposed to be my big finish. It wasn't my big finish. Anyway, the next time someone says, let them be overwhelmed by your fabulosity, I'll say, that's their problem, not mine. Huh. With love and wonder, this is Wonder Wendy with another episode of The Imperfect Prophet, a podcast for women who wonder. I look forward to hearing from you. And if you think of a friend while you're listening to this episode, that's your cue to reach out to them. Share this episode with them and say, this made me think of you. You might want to listen to it. I laughed at, I learned something. Share that with them because it's a way to connect with an old friend. The world told you it was time to talk to them again. And until next week, bucket listers, stay hydrated. Even though temperatures are getting cooler, you still need to keep your body moist. That sounded wrong. Oh well, we'll talk to you again next week.
Like what you heard here today? Then we should be friends. I suggest you join my Facebook group. It's a good way to connect. We can have a conversation, ask me questions, whatever you want to do. It is called the Wonderful Bucket List Life. That's Wonder-Full Bucket List Life. Be a bucket lister and join me on this adventure. Or you can go to my webpage, which is Wonder Wendy and Friends, join the mailing list, learn about the book I wrote, adventures that are coming up in the future, and other podcasts. I look forward to talking to you soon, and stay hydrated. Have a great day.